When people think of vampires or zombies, they usually imagine the slow-walking undead from horror movies. But in China, there is a very different kind of undead. You've probably seen them before in the classic Hong Kong film Mr. Vampire, in the game Jiangshi Impact with the character Qi, and in Darkstalkers with Senko. They have pale green skin, a yellow talisman stuck to their forehead. Their bodies are stiff, arms stretched straight out in front. They wear Qing Dynasty offshore robes, and instead of walking, they hop. So they are often called hopping vampires, or Jiangshi. It's a strange image, unsettling, almost absurd, and it raises a lot of questions. Why do they hop like that? What does the paper talisman actually do? Why are they almost always male? And why are they just like offshoots from the Qing dynasty? As it turns out, the cinematic Jiangshi wasn't invented out of thin air. Its roots trace back to a real folk tradition from western Hunan in southern China, something known as corpsedriving. And to understand Jiangshi, we have to start there. What we call corpsedriving comes from western Hunan in southern China. Corpsedrivers were able to guide the bodies of those who died far from home, helping them make the journey back to their native villages for burial. This tradition is deeply connected to an ancient spiritual practice known in Chinese as Wu. These figures were not witches, but ritual specialists, closer to shamans, believed to act as mediators between the human and spirit worlds. Through rhythmic movement and ritual dance, Wu were believed to invite the presence of the divine, entering a trance state to deliver messages, offer guidance, or help those seeking answers. Even the Chinese character Wu reflects this idea. In traditional interpretation, the top line represents heaven, the bottom line represents earth, and the vertical stroke between them suggests a pathway connecting the two. On either side stand human figures, often imagined as ritual dancers, symbolizing the Wu acting as a bridge between worlds. Underlying all of this is a powerful belief in Chinese culture. No matter where a person dies, they must return home. There's an old saying that translates roughly to "fallen leaves return to their roots." In other words, the dead belong in their homeland. Without proper burial, a soul might wander restless and alone. This concern for the spirit of the dead goes back thousands of years. In the ancient poem Summoning the Soul, written by the poet Qu Yuan, the speaker repeatedly cries out, "O soul, come back, return to your old abode," fearing that the spirit might suffer in the wilderness, attacked by beasts, or tormented by demons. He calls it home again and again. Beyond poetry, even older legends tells a mythic origin. In ancient times, the Miao ancestor Chiyou fought a great battle against the Yellow Emperor along the Yellow River. After his army was defeated, the battlefield was strewn with fallen soldiers. Grief-stricken, Chiyou is said to have called upon his advisor to perform powerful rituals, raising the fallen soldiers to their feet and leading them back home. Many believe this story is the earliest origin of the corpse-driving tradition in western Hunan. By the time of the Ming and Qing dynasties, many young men from western Hunan left home to fight or seek work, most of them male. But the region was rugged and remote, with treacherous mountains, dense forests, poisonous insects, and thick fog. Hiring people or carts to transport the dead was simply too expensive. In this context, corpse driver specialists trained in the technical skill of transporting the dead became essential. This also explains why the Jiangshi we see in films are almost always male. They represent the young men who died far from home, someone's son, someone's husband, and someone's father, being guided back to their village. As corpse drivers became more common, stories about them started to spread. Some claim that they used talismans and bells to handle mysterious obstacles along the way. Others said the bodies could walk on their own, guided by the supernatural forces. And some even believed it was a secret skill only a select few could master. These tales gradually lifted corpse driving out of its practical context, shrouding it in mystery and even a hint of horror. But where did these legends really come from? And what did corpse drivers actually do? Let's find out. Corpse driving wasn't one person job. When a corpse driver was hired by a family, he would form a team. One person leading the way, the several others handling and managing the body. But before they even set out, the first step wasn't driving at all, it was preparation. Using a combination of local herbs, cinnabar, or mercury, the corpse drivers treated the body to preserve it. They would dehydrate, fumigate, or otherwise prepare the corpse to slow down decay, loosen the joints, and make it lighter. In the rugged mountains and treacherous terrain of western Hunan, this careful preparation often determined whether the body would make it safely back home. Next, the corpse drivers would thread a bamboo pole under the body, rest the arms on it, and secure everything with thick rope from the wrists to the armpits. This way, even if two poles carried several bodies at once, they wouldn't slip while moving along the uneven mountain paths. During times of war or disease, this method was far more efficient for transporting multiple bodies. Finally, the corpse would be dressed in loose, flowing clothes. The bamboo poles ran inside the sleeves and came out the back, completely hiding the arms. From a distance, all you could see were rows of human-shaped figures with arms outstretched, following the lead carrier. The faces were usually covered, sometimes with cloths, sometimes with talisman papers like those seen in movies, topped with a hat. This served two purposes. It shielded the bodies from sunlight and insects, slowing decay, and it eased the psychological burden on both the corpse drivers and anyone who happened to see them along the way. At this point, you might notice that the burial clothes used to transport the bodies look like a lot like Qing Dynasty offshore robes, long, flowing, topped with a hat, and often in dark, sober colors. Of course, the classic image of Jiangshi wearing Qing robes comes mostly from Hong Kong movies. Stories of Jiangshi were already common in Qing Dynasty literature, providing plenty of inspiration for filmmakers. Add to that the popularity of period dramas at the time, where these costumes were easy to get, and the image stuck in people's minds. Once the preparations were complete, the team would finally set out, usually at night or in the early hours of the morning. The cool darkness helped slow decay and kept curious passerby from panicking. During the day, the team would rest in special inns, built just for corpsedriving. These places didn't welcome ordinary travelers. The doors were kept open so the drivers could quickly place the bodies against the walls behind the door before dawn. The doors were kept open so the drivers could quickly place the bodies against the walls behind the doors before dawn, then quietly left when night fell again. On the road, the lead driver would carry a bell or small gong. The clear ringing sound echoed through the mountains, serving both as a signal for the team and a warning to anyone nearby, people or animals, to give way. The bamboo poles holding the bodies were flexible, bending slightly under the weight and causing a gentle rocking motion. From a distance, in the darkness, it looked like a procession of bodies moving on their own, arms outstretched, hopping along behind the lead driver. Besides carrying the bodies on bamboo poles, there was another method, carrying them on the back. After being preserved and dehydrated, the corpse would be carried on the driver's back, and both would be draped with a loose rope. Sometimes only the head and lips were real, while the torso was replaced with a straw dummy. One person led the way in front, while the others carried the bodies, taking turns along the route. In the darkness of the mountains, the ringing of bells or gongs helped the carriers stay on course and follow the leader. These are the most common ways of corpsedriving, which might remind you a bit of modern funeral practices. But the mysterious aura surrounding corpse drivers wasn't just because of their work. It was largely created on purpose. First, the spiritual aspect. Being a corpse driver was a real profession, with its own rules and techniques that outsiders couldn't understand. Combined with the local Wu culture in western Hunan, this made people both curious and respectful, and even fearful. Second, natural fear. Back then, villagers seeing a corpse-driving team would instinctively close their doors and stay away. This deep-rooted fear meant no one dare ask questions, and so the mystery grew. Third, a protective disguise. The biggest threat on the road wasn't ghosts, it was people. Bandits roamed the mountains, so corpse drivers used fear as a shield. Who would dare stop a team of moving corpses? The spooky appearance was actually their safest defense. Fourth, a cloak for crime. Some took advantage of people's fear, using corpsedriving as a cover for illegal activities like smuggling drugs, antiques, weapons, or scarce goods. The scarier and more mysterious it looked, the safer they were, and the less anyone would interfere. After exploring the secrets of corpsedriving, it's easy to feel a mix of awe and dread. It seems like a job no ordinary person could or would do. But what kind of people became corpse drivers? And what qualities did they need? In old western Hunan, corpse drivers were respected figures in every village, known for their skills and authority. Taking on an apprentice wasn't easy. Masters set tough tests. First, courage. The apprentice might have to go into a remote graveyard alone at night to fetch an object. Only the brave could pass. Second, strength. Apprentices had to carry heavy loads and move across rough terrain. Corpses don't walk themselves, so drivers had to lift them over steep hills and rocky paths. They also moved fast, covering around 30 to 50 kilometers in a single night. Without real strength, the job was impossible. Third, appearance. Strangely enough, some masters prefer apprentices who look rough or even intimidating. The harsher, the better. The reasoning was practical. Someone less conventionally attractive was thought to be less likely to marry, and therefore less tied down by family responsibilities. That meant they could devote themselves fully to the work. There was also another advantage. A fearsome-looking corpse driver would naturally keep passerby at a distance, reducing unwanted attention or interference. And then there was the more mythical belief. Some people said that a fierce face could intimidate wandering spirits, much like Zhonghui, the legendary demon killer in Chinese folklore. In that view, a frightening appearance offers spiritual protection, helping keep restless souls at bay and ensuring the driver's safety. After formally becoming an apprentice, the student had to learn the core skills of the trade, especially how to prepare and preserve a body. That was the most important part. But there were also stories of more mysterious abilities, techniques said to make a corpse stand upright or even move on command. Whether literal or symbolic, these tales added to the legend of the craft. And at this point, you might be wondering, in the 21st century, with high-speed trains and airplanes everywhere, could a profession like this still exist? In western Hunan today, are there really any corpse drivers left? The profession of corpse driving grew out of a deeply rooted belief in returning home, the idea that those who die far away should be brought back to be buried in their native soil. But as transportation improved and roads and bridges connected even remote regions, there were faster and safer ways to bring the dead home. Over time, the need for corpse drivers faded, and eventually the profession disappeared. But Tian Tiewu witnessed that transition firsthand. He comes from Zhijiang County, a region in western Hunan long associated with the area's rich and mysterious folk traditions. In the spring of 1939, Tian Tiewu's grandfather led more than 100 soldiers from his hometown to fight in the war against Japan in another province. After a brutal battle, over 80 of them were killed. Before they had left, he had made a promise. If any of his men fell, he would bring them home. Determined to keep his word, he turned to his eldest son, Tian's uncle, and together with several Wu practitioners, they transported the fallen soldiers back to the western Hunan using the traditional corpse driving methods. Growing up under his uncle's influence, Tian developed a deep fascination with Wu traditions, especially the mysterious practice of corpse driving. With his uncle's guidance, he gradually learned the secrets of the craft. Today, Tian is one of the few persons still connected to this tradition. The profession itself is gone, and there's no real market for it anymore. But he doesn't feel discouraged. Instead, he leads a performance troupe that has transformed many traditional skills into stage acts. By adapting the corpse driving process for performance, he's found a way to bring it into the modern world. Tian has made a promise. Even if corpse driving no longer exists as a profession, he won't let the knowledge disappear with him. He plans to pass on everything he knows to his apprentices. In doing so, he hopes the practice won't remain just a dark and mysterious legend, but becomes something people understand, remember, and see as part of their cultural heritage. After all, corpse driving in western Hunan may have arisen because of poor transportation in the past, but what it truly carried was something deeper, the longing to return home. Over time, sites like this gradually inspired stories and legends, eventually shaping the image we now know as Jiangshi. In other words, the Jiangshi of legend may look supernatural, but behind the myth lies a very human story. Seen this way, Jiangshi aren't so scary after all. They might have been someone's son, someone's husband, and someone's father. And that eerie, stiff-legged gait, that was just their way of going home. That's all for today on the corpse driving tradition in western Hunan, one of the main roots behind the Jiangshi legend. Thanks for watching, or see you next time. Bye!